Good evening, everyone. In the world of fantasy literature publishing, trends will come and trends will go. And one of the biggest trends in fantasy publishing these days is romantasy. That's the kind of portmanteau name they've come up for romance fantasy. Now, this isn't necessarily a fantasy novel with a romantic plot or subplot. No, romantasy is a little bit more specific than that. It's kind of an outgrowth of the young adult genre. You know, Stephanie Meyer's Twilight. This is kind of what stuff like that is morphed into. And it's extremely popular. Lots of books are being published by people who want to be the next Sarah J. Maas or Rebecca Yarros. Now, these particular works are not really my cup of tea. They tend to feature, and again, there may be exceptions to this rule, and I certainly would like to know about those because I like a good, well written romantic plot. It's just sometimes hard to find those. I remember hearing another YouTuber remark not long ago that romantic plots were, quote, easy to get right. I can't help thinking that if they really were that easy to get right, more authors would actually get them right. Instead, we tend to see a lot of bland female main characters, charismatic bad boy, borderline toxic, if not altogether toxic, male main characters, and lots of spice. A main feature of romantasy that sets it apart from more standard fantasy novels with romantic plots is the heavy emphasis on the spice, on the sex. And unfortunately, in a lot of instances, it also features some disappointingly regressive gender politics. So, romantasy may not be my cup of tea, but my main issue with it is, like most trends, if something becomes really crazy popular and other authors are scrambling to catch lightning in the bottle and have a success of their own that comes close to duplicating that, it tends to saturate the market and it tends to drive out other kinds of stories. A lot of male fantasy fans have been complaining that it seems like nothing is written for them anymore, that you don't really have any male main characters, male protagonists these days. And I can see their point, but from where I'm sitting, I feel disappointed that we're not getting other kinds of stories with female leads. We're not getting a lot of woman centered plots that aren't romantasy. Or are we? Because I happen to think they are out there, it's just that we're not hearing about them. So, this is the first vlog of a new series that I'm titling Female Authors Whose Work Needs More Discussion. Female authors whose work should be talked about more. Because in a whole flood of conversation around romantasy and Sarah J. Maas and Rebecca Yarros and people trying to be like them, um, these ladies aren't getting the attention they deserve. So I'm going to start by telling you about one of the reading highlights of my year so far. Finishing up, or at least reading up to the latest book in a series called The Gael Song, Gael. It's a series by Shauna Lawless, and it consists so far of 3 books. There is a 4th one coming out later in the year, and believe me, when it drops, I will be right there. But the first book is called Children of Gods and Fighting Men. And then the second is called Words of Kings and Prophets. And then the third, The Land of the Living and the Dead. Now, these three books weave Irish history, specifically the conflict between Celtic and Viking forces in Ireland's early medieval period, the reign of Brian Boru. Brian Boru is, in fact, a major character in this story. But it weaves this Irish history with mythology, with elements of mythology, specifically two groups of immortals. You have the Tuatha De Danann, or the Descendants, as they're often called, and the Fomorians. And both of these immortal races are in their twilight. They're dying out. They're dying out, and each race is trying to figure out how they can get their strength back. How can they reclaim their power? So you have in this story two main female leads. The first is Fodla. She is a descendant, and she has the gift of healing. Those who are wanting more, what we might call traditionally feminine or clearly feminine coded female leads, where you have strength shown in attributes generally associated with femininity, you're going to love Fodla because she is strong. She is a woman of honor and integrity, but is also very kind, very empathetic, and she is trying to clear her sister's name. Her sister has been sent into exile for having inappropriate relations with a mortal. And she has a child. The sister has a child, and Fodla is looking after her sister's child, trying to protect him from those who might destroy him on suspicion of being a half-mortal child. So her plot runs, at least for the first book, it runs alongside the plot of Gormla. It does not, if you see the name written on the page, it does not look like Gormla or Gorla. It looks like Gormflaith. That's how it's spelled. But thankfully, Lawless does include a pronunciation guide, which makes it clear that it's Gormla. So Gormla is the last, or one of the last, of the Fomorians. Now, the Descendants believe the Fomorians to have been killed off. They believe all the Fomorians to be dead. But Gormla has two main goals: to shore up as much power for herself as she can, and to hunt down and destroy the last of the Descendants. So Fodla is presented in a very sympathetic light. Gormla is pretty much a monster, although she is a fascinating monster, and we do get a rather disturbing but fascinating look at the world through her point of view. One of my least favorite of her attributes is that she absolutely cannot stand any other woman. She has an almost instinctive antipathy to any other woman that happens to be unlucky enough to cross her path. So the first book has the two plot lines running parallel for most of its page time. And I admit that the first book I did find to be a little bit slow going. I was intrigued enough by the characters to keep reading, to be invested in them. But it was really with the second book, Words of Kings and Prophets, that my interest shot up considerably, because at this point you see the two plots weave together, and each of these characters becomes a figure in the other character's story. So the plots unite. And at that point, again, I was racing through these books, just fascinated with the interplay. The politics was really well done, and the political scheming, and the backstabbing, the negotiations, the allyships, the alliances that were made, and then all the underhanded plots, while at the same time, as long as Fodla is the focus, you actually got some really nice female friendships and what I thought was a decently written and sympathetically done romantic subplot. So, if you're fascinated by Irish history, if you like a good mix of political drama and military action, and you just like to read about fascinating characters, both mortal and immortal, these books are for you, and you should seek them out. I have not really seen them shelved at a lot of brick and mortar bookstores, but seek them out because they are well worth a read. So, historical fantasy. That's what I would call these books. Again, there is a fourth volume still to come out, and I read the third one, and I'm a little upset because the penultimate volume in a series tends to leave the characters you care about in a very bad place. So, hoping that things will turn around when the fourth book comes out. I will be looking forward to seeing how Lawless brings this series to a conclusion. So, highly recommended for those who want female lead characters but aren't all that enthusiastic about romantasy and are looking for works that are flying under the radar. So, more on this later. I'll be back with another example. Thank you very much.